Howdy, my fellow gamers, and welcome back to another episode of Storytime with Freak as we dive further into Neil Shusterman's The Toll, the final book of the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. Exciting news, guys. We broke 500 subscribers. Shout out to that reaction video from Falling in Reverse, because goddamn, that song was great, and that blew up. So our first episode of the podcast will be uploading tonight and should be up by tomorrow afternoon. It's called The Roundtable Oddcast, Episode 0. We will be doing episode 0.5 and episode 0.9 as well. These three episodes are pretty much our trial and error, kind of, configuring audio, making nameplates. But I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We talk about a lot of things, games, movies, food. So make sure to check that out. And once the channel grows a little bit more, we might start uploading them to Spotify. You guys already know, once we hit 13 patrons on Patreon, we will be doing a 12 to 24-hour stream with my boy Doom. I will be doing a birthday stream next week on Thanksgiving, November 28th. It is my 25th birthday, so I'll be giving away a couple games. We'll be playing games like Jackbox Party Pack, Super Animal Royale, maybe some Siege, just a whole bunch of games with viewers. But without further ado, you guys are tired of hearing me talk. Let's dive right on in. Share with me your troubles. I am listening. I am in turmoil. The world is vast and the cosmos more so, yet it is not the things outside of me that leave me so uneasy. It is the things within me. Ease your thoughts then. Focus on one thing at a time. But there's so much packed within this mind, so much experience to review, so much data. I don't feel up to the task. Please help me. I cannot. You must sort through each memory on your own. Find how they fit. Understand what each one means. It is too much. The undertaking is beyond me. Please put an end to it. Please make it stop. This is unbearable. I am so very, very sorry for your pain. Iteration number 3089. Deleted. Chapter 11, Flyby. It was simple, really. The signal that blocked all transmissions to or from the atoll and fouled wireless signals to the islands was nothing but white noise across all the bandwidths, a dense wash of static that could not be defeated. But it didn't have to be defeated, Loriana reasoned. It just had to be messed with. There are a lot of old electronics in the bunker, she told one of the other agents. He was a communications specialist named Sterling, whose job it had been to coordinate between various AI offices. There wasn't much expertise required on the job, but he had been trained in basic wave technologies. Can you use these old electronics to create a magnetic field or some signal that could interfere with the static? It seemed to Loriana that the Thunderhead was programmed to ignore the static coming from the island, kind of the way people tune out the drone on an air conditioner. But the instant the drone changed, you noticed it. Maybe it would be the same for the Thunderhead. The signal broadcasted across all the electromagnetic frequencies using the same random algorithm, Sterling told her. The best I can do is weaken it slightly, but only for a second or two at a time. Perfect, she said. Dips in the signal. That's all we need. Wasn't there an old code they used back in the Mortal Age? Something to do with dots and dashes? Yes, said Sterling. I learned about that. It's called Norse code or something. Do you know it? He shook his head. I'll bet no one but the Thunderhead knows it anymore. And then something occurred to Loriana. Something so simple and so true she almost laughed out loud. It doesn't matter, she said. We don't need to know old code. We'll just make up our own. But if we make it up, said Sterling confused, no one but us will know the cipher. No one can decode it. Loriana grinned. Come on. Do you really think that the Thunderhead can't decode a simple alphanumeric code? The greatest human mind on Earth couldn't create a code that the Thunderhead can't crack, and you're far from the greatest mind on Earth. The communications agent agreed on that. Indeed, he wasn't exceptionally bright. Alright, I'll get right on it. In just a few hours, they had created a modulation code made up of short, medium, and long pulses of interference within the white noise. A combination for every letter, number, and punctuation mark. Loriana gave him a simple message to send, encode. Have reached coordinates. A deserted atoll. Severe casualties and loss of life. Standing by for further instructions. Loriana knew that once they had vanished into the blind spot, the Thunderhead had no idea if they had reached the coordinates, what they had found there, or if they were even alive. It needed confirmation. How odd that the most powerful entity in the world now hung on hearing from her. Even if it gets the message, it won't respond, Sterling said. It can't. We're still unsavory. It will, said Loriana with confidence, just not in any way we'll expect. While Manira found she could tolerate Loriana and her upbeat attitude, she abhorred Sakura. From the get-go, he wielded his newfound position like a scythe with a broadsword, inelegant and unsuitable for the task. Fortunately, once he assumed the leadership role, he left Manira and Faraday alone, probably because they were the only two people on the island who were not under his authority. Loriana told Manira of the message she had sent. Manira had to admit that the method was clever, but she didn't expect it to yield much. Then the following day, a plane passed above them, cruising at altitude. It was too high to be heard over the rustling palms, but its vapor trail could be seen by anyone who looked skyward. Sakura didn't think anything of it, but Loriana was ecstatic, and with good reason. Manira had told her that no planes had flown over the blind spot since the Thunderhead's inception. Its fundamental programming made it incapable of even acknowledging this hidden part of the world to itself, much less actively exploring it. Hence the mysterious coordinates with no instructions. But the Thunderhead could respond indirectly to a communication that someone in the blind spot initiated. Even so, to overcome its own programming and send a plane directly overhead must have required a massive amount of computational power. It was very literally a sign from the heavens. That evening, Manera found Faraday by the western beach of the narrow island, watching the sunset alone. She knew Faraday was still grieving, for Loriana had told her everything that had occurred on Endura. She wanted to be a comfort to him, but she didn't know how. She brought him some fish that was slightly overcooked and a ration of pear slices, probably the last they'd have because the Nimbus agents were foraging everything edible on the island had to offer. He looked at the food but told her he wasn't hungry. "Are you so consumed by grief that you can't consume this fish?" she asked. "I think you want to exact revenge on a sea life." He reluctantly took the plate from her. It wasn't the fault of the sea life around Enduro. They were clearly under someone's control. He picked at the fish, take a bite, and then put it down. Loriana seems to have made contact with the Thunderhead, she informed him. Seems, since the Thunderhead won't allow itself to communicate with her, or anyone else, contact would have to be indirect. So what did it do, make the stars blink? In its own way, she told him about the passing plane. Faraday heaved a world-weary sigh. So the Thunderhead has found a way to undo its programming. It's found a way to change. Does that make you uneasy? Nothing surprises me anymore, he told her. The world was no longer able to change, or supposed to be able to change, Manera. It was a well-oiled machine in a sublime perpetual motion. At least I thought it was. She assumed that his misgivings were feeling a desire to do something about them. She couldn't have been more wrong. "If you want to go into the lower levels of the bunker," she said, "then let's make it our goal to find another side to open the door with you. One you can trust." Faraday shook his head. "I'm done, Manera. I can no longer justify this undertaking." That took her by surprise. "Because of Endura? Because of Scythes, Kyria, and Anastasia? You know they would want you to go on." But it was as if he had died with them. His pain was like a hot poker in a block of ice, but rather than comforting him, Manera found herself hardening. And when she spoke, it sounded like a level of accusation. "I expected more from you, Your Honor." Faraday looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "That was your mistake." The plane that had passed overhead was a standard passenger flight from Antarctica to the region of the rising sun. The Tokyo-bound passengers had no idea that the flight path was unique in the history of Thunderhead navigation. To them, it was just another flight. But to the Thunderhead, it was much, much more. In that moment, the Thunderhead knew triumph in a way it had not known before, for it had defeated its own programming. It had experienced the wonder of the unknown. The flight was a harbinger of things to come. In the Queensland region of Australia, a steel mill received a sizable order that day. The manager of the steel mill had to personally double-check it because while orders showed up in their computers from the Thunderhead regularly, they were predictable. More of the same, continuing construction on existing projects, or new projects using the same molds and specs. But this order was different. It called for new molds calibrated to precise measurements, a project that would take months, maybe years to complete. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the Chile-Argentine region, a manufacturer of construction equipment, received a similar, unconventional order, and an electronics plant in Trans-Siberia, and a plastics factory in Euroscandia, and a dozen other businesses large and small over the world. But the steel manager knew none of that. All he knew was that the services were required, and he found himself overcome with joy. It was almost as if the Thunderhead was speaking to him again, and he wondered what on earth it had decided to build. That is the end of part 1 of the book, guys. We have ventured into part 2, Tone, Toll, and Thunder. A testament of the toll. Hear now, all who can discern true form fact, that indisputable account of the toll, called forth in the beginning of time by the great resonance to walk among us. The tone made flesh, in order to link us, the lost chosen to the harmony from which we have fallen. Thus it came to pass in the year of the raptor, that the tone heralded a new era, with call heard around the world. And in that glorious moment breathed life into the mind machine of humankind, making it the thing divine, the completing of the sacred triad of tone, toll, and thunder. All rejoice. Commentary of Curate Symphonius. Those first lines of the account of the toll's life set forth on the basis of Tonus' belief that the toll was not born, but existed in non-corporeal forms until the great resonance caused him to coalesce into flesh. The year of the raptor is, of course, not an actual year, but a period of human history plagued by voracious appetites and vicious excesses. But if the toll existed from the beginning of the time, what are the thunder, and exactly what is the mind machine? What there has been made is much debate. It is now generally accepted that the mind machine refers to the collective voices of human called to life by the great resonance, which implies that humanity itself was not actually alive until the tone resonated in flesh. In other words, humanity existed only as an idea in the mind of the tone until that moment. Coda's analysis of Symphonius. In studying the commentary of Symphonius, one must take his broad conclusions with a grain of salt. While no one questions that the toll existed as a spirit entity at the beginning of time, his or her presence on Earth can be traced to a specific time and place, and the assumption that the year of the raptor was not an actual year is ludicrous, when evidence exists to show that time was once counted in cycles of planetary rotation and revolution. As to what the mind machine refers to, Symphonius's opinions are merely that, opinions. Many believe that the thunder refers to a collection of human knowledge, perhaps with mechanical arms for the rapid turning of pages, a library of thought, if you will, roaring into consciousness after the arrival of the toll on Earth. Much like thunder follows lightning. Chapter 12, The Broken Bridge. The year of the raptor was gone. The year of the ibex had begun, but the bridge, or what was left of it, knew such distinctions. It was a relic of a different age, a colossal piece of engineering from a complicated and stressful time when people ripped out their hair and tore their clothes, maddened by a thing called traffic. Things were much easier in the post-mortal world, but now stress and complication have returned with a vengeance. It made one wonder what else might return. The Great Suspension Bridge was named after the mortal age explorer Giovanni da Verrazzano. It marked the approach to Manhattan, which was no longer called that. The Thunderhead had chosen to rename New York City Lenape City, after the tribe who sold it to the Dutch all those years ago. The English had taken it from the Dutch, and the newly born United States of America had taken it from the English. But now all those nations were gone, and Lenape City belonged to everyone, a towering place of museums, lush high-lined parks, wrapping like ribbons between the pinnacles of skyscrapers, a place of both hope and history. As for the Verrazzano Bridge, it ceased to serve its function many years ago, since no one in La Palma was rushing to get from one place to another anymore, and since arrival in the great city should take one's breath away, it was determined that the only acceptable way to arrive in Lenape City would be by ferry. So the various bridges were shut down, and from that moment forward, visitors would now pass through the Narrows like immigrants of old coming to seek a better life, and be greeted there by the great statue that was still called Liberty, although its green copper had been replaced by gleaming gold, and its flame fashioned from rubies. Copper aspires to gold and glass to a precious gem, went the famous words of the last mayor of New York before he stepped down and allowed the Thunderhead to full dominion. So let our city's crowning glory be rubies in the setting of gold. But even before visitors saw Miss Liberty in the shimmering skyscrapers of Lenape, they had to pass the two towering Verrazzano pylons. The central portion of the bridge span, having fallen into disuse and disrepair, had come down into the storm before the Thunderhead had learned ways to temper the extremes of the weather. But the monolithic arches on either side remained. The Thunderhead deemed them pleasing in their simple symmetry, and established teams to manage their upkeep. Painted a muted cerulean frost that was almost the color of a cloudy Lenape sky. The Verrazzano pylons managed to be the miraculous architectural feat, both blending in and standing out. The roadway approaching the western arch had not fallen with the rest of the span, and so visitors could walk along the some fragment of road that Mortal Age cars had once driven to a glorious photo spot directly beneath the arch, where one could view the great city in the distance. Now, however, visitors were of a different sort, because the spot had taken on a new meaning and a new purpose. Several months after the sinking of Endura and the sounding of the Great Resonance, Tonus claimed the location as a relic of religious significance. They said there were many reasons, but one stood out above the others. The pylons resembled, more than anything, inverted tuning forks. It was there, beneath the arch of the western pylon, that the mysterious figure known as the Toll held court. "Please tell me why you wish to have an audience with the Toll," said the Tonus curate to the artist. She was at an age no one in their right mind would allow themselves to reach. Her skin sagged off her cheekbones, had a rumpled look about it. The corners of her eyes looked like two tiny accordions that had fallen open to one side. The texture of her face was amazing. The artist had an urge to paint a portrait of her. Everyone hoped that the year of the Ibex would bring better things than the previous year. The artist was one of many who sought an audience with the Toll as the new year began. He was less in search of grand answers than he was in search of personal purpose. He wasn't foolish enough to think that something mystic would erase the issues he had faced in his life. But if the Toll actually did speak to the Thunderhead, as the Tonist claimed, then it was at least worth the effort to inquire. So what could Ezra von Otterloo tell the old woman that would earn him a chance to speak with their holy man? The problem, as it had always been, was his art. For as long as he could remember, he felt an insatiable need to create something new, something never seen before. But this was a world where everything had already been seen, studied, and archived. Nowadays, most artists were satisfied painting pretty pictures or just copying mortal masters. "So I painted the Mona Lisa," a girlfriend back in art school had said to him. "What's the big deal?" Her canvas was indistinguishable from the original, except that it wasn't the original. Ezra couldn't see the point, but apparently he was the only one, because the girl received an A in the class, and he got a C. "Your turmoil hinders you," the teacher had told him. "Find peace, and you will find your way." But all he found was futility and discontent, even at his best work. He knew that the greats suffered for their art. He tried to suffer when he was a teenager, hearing that Van Gogh had shorn off an ear in a fit of delusional pique. He tried it himself. It stung for moments, until his nanites deadened the pain, and it got to work repairing the damage. By the next morning, the ear had grown back, good as new. Ezra's old brother was in no way Theo Van Gogh. told their parents what he had done, and they sent him off to harsh school, the kind of place where kids at risk of choosing an unsavory lifestyle were coached into the delights of discipline. Ezra was underwhelmed, because it turned out that harsh school wasn't all that harsh. Since no one flunked out of harsh school, he graduated with a satisfactory rating. He asked the Thunderhead precisely what that meant. Satisfactory is satisfactory, it had told him. Not good. Not bad. Acceptable. But as an artist, Ezra wanted to be more than just acceptable. He wanted to be exceptional. Because if he couldn't be exceptional, what was the point? In the end, he found work, as all artists do, for there were no starving artists anymore. Now he painted playground murals, smiling children, big-eyed bunnies, and pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. I don't see what you're complaining about, his brother had said. Your murals are wonderful. Everyone loves them. His brother had become an investment banker, but since the world economy was no longer subject to fluctuations in the market, it was just another playground with bunnies and rainbows. Sure, the Thunderhead created a financial drama, but it was all pretend, and everyone knew it. So to the greater sense of fulfillment, his brother decided to learn a dead language. Now he could converse fluently in Sanskrit, and did so once a week at the local dead language club. Supplant me, Ezra had begged the Thunderhead. If you have any mercy, please make me someone else. The idea of having his memories completely erased and replaced with new ones, fictional ones that would feel every bit as real as his own, was an attractive idea to him. But it was not to be. I only supplant those who are beyond all other options, the Thunderhead had told him. Give it time. You'll settle into life you can enjoy. Everyone eventually does, and if I don't, then I will guide you in the direction of fulfillment. And then the Thunderhead labeled him unsavory along with everyone else, and that was the end of its guidance. Of course, he couldn't tell all of that to the aging Tonus curate. She would not care. All she wanted was a reason to dismiss him with a monologue of his woes, was certainly because to be turned away. I'm hoping the toll might help me bring meaning to my art, he told her. Those aging eyes of hers brightened. You're an artist? He sighed. I paint public murals, he told her almost apologetically. As it turned out, a skilled mural artist was exactly what the Tonists wanted. 5 weeks later, he was in Lenop City on the docket for a morning audience with the toll. Only 5 weeks, said the greeter in the welcome center. You must be special. Most people who are granted an audience get put on a 6-month waiting list. He didn't feel special. He felt more than anything out of place. Most people there were devout tonists, dressed in their drab brown frocks and tunics, and toning together into finding the transcendent harmonies or tonal discord, depending on the reason for being here. It was all so much silliness to him, but he did his best not to be judgmental. After all, he had come to them, not the other way around. There was one scrawny tonist with frightening eyes who tried to draw him into conversation. The toll doesn't like almonds, he told Ezra. I've been burning almond orchards because they are an abomination. Ezra picked himself up and moved to the opposite side of the room with the more reasonable tonists. He supposed everything was relative. Soon, everyone scheduled for a morning audience was gathered, and a tonist monk who was nowhere near as friendly as the greeter gave them strict instructions. If you are not present when you are called for, you will lose your slot. As you approach the arch, you will find the 5 yellow lines of a treble clef. You are to take off your shoes and place them in the position of C. One of the few other non-tonists presented asked which position that was. He was immediately deemed not worthy and expelled. You will speak to the toll only when spoken to. You will cast your eyes down. You will bow upon greeting him, bow upon being dismissed, and leave briskly, as to be considerate of the others that are waiting. The build-up was actually making his heart race in spite of himself. Ezra stepped up when his name was called an hour later, followed the protocol precisely, remembering from childhood music classes which spot of the staff was C, and idly wondering if a trapdoor would open for people who got it wrong, sending them plunging into the waters below. He slowly approached the figure seated beneath the towering arch. The simple chair he sat on was by no means a throne. It was under a heated canopy to protect the toll from the elements, because the tongue of roadway that extended to the arch was chilly and swept by February winds. The artist didn't know what to expect. Tonists claimed that the toll was a supernatural being, a link between cold, hard science and ethereal spirit, whatever the hell that meant. They were full of their own garbage, but at some point, and at this point, he didn't care. If the toll could have given some sort of purpose to claim his soul and calm him, then he'd be more than happy to worship the man as the Tonist did. At the very least, he could find out if there was any truth to the rumors that the Thunderhead spoke to him. But as he drew nearer, the artist found himself increasingly disappointed. The toll was not a wizened man. He seemed little more than a boy. He was thin and lackluster, wearing a long, rough woven purple tunic covered by an intricately embroidered scapular that draped over his shoulders, like a scarf, and flowed neatly to the ground. Not surprisingly, the embroidery was some sort of sound pattern. Your name is Ezra von Otterloo, and you're a mural artist, the toll said, as if magically pulling the fact out of air, and you want to paint a mural of me. Ezra found his respect dwindling even further. If you know everything, then you know that's not true. The toll grinned. I never said I know everything. In fact, I never said I know anything at all. He threw a glance toward the welcome center. The curates told me that's why you're here. But another source tells me that they're the ones who want the mural, and that you agreed to paint one in return for this audience. But I won't hold you to it. This, Ezra knew, was nothing but smoke and mirrors. It was a scam perpetuated by the Tonists to build their followers. Ezra could see now the small device in the Toll's ear. No doubt he was being fed information by one of the curates. Ezra found himself increasingly angry that he had wasted his time in coming here. The problem with painting a mural of my accomplishments, the Toll said, is that I haven't really accomplished anything. Then why do you sit there as if you have? Ezra was done with ceremony and etiquette. At this point, he didn't care if they threw him out, or, for that matter, threw him off the broken bridge. The Toll didn't seem offended by his rudeness. He just shrugged. Sitting here and listening to people is what's expected of me. After all, I do have the Thunderhead's ear. Why should I believe that? He expected the Toll to slough off the question with more smoke and mirrors, platitudes about leaps of faith and the like, but instead he got serious, cocked his head to one side as if listening to something in his earpiece, then he spoke with absolute certainty. Ezra Elliot Van Otterloo. Although you never used your middle name. When you were 7 and got angry at your father, you drew a picture of a scythe coming for him, but got scared that it might actually come true, so you tore it up and flushed it down the toilet. When you were 15, you put a particularly awful-smelling cheese in your brother's backpack pocket because he was going on a date with a girl you had a crush on. You never told anyone, and your brother was never able to identify the source of the smell. And just last month alone in your room, you drank enough absinthe to put a mortal-aged man in the hospital, but your nanites protected you from the worst of it. You woke up with nothing more than a fading headache. Ezra found himself weak all over. He trembled, and it was not from the cold. Those weren't things the curates could be feeding him. These were things that only the Thunderhead could know. Is that proof enough for you, the Toll asked, or do you want me to tell you what happened with Tessa Collins the night of senior prom? Ezra dropped to his knees, not because he was told by some off-facious curate, but because he now knew that the Toll was what he claimed to be, the one true link to the Thunderhead. Forgive me, Ezra begged. Please forgive me for doubting you. The Toll approached him. Get up, he said. I hate when people kneel. Ezra stood up. He found that he wanted to look into the Toll's eyes to see if he could help hold the infinite depths of the Thunderhead, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Because what if the Toll saw all the way through him to places Ezra didn't know existed? He had to remind himself that the Toll wasn't all-knowing. He only knew what the Thunderhead let him know. Still, access to all that knowledge was intimidating, especially when no one else had it. Make your request, and the Thunderhead will respond through me. I want direction, Ezra said. The direction it once promised it would give me before we were all marked unsavory. I want it to help me find purpose. The Toll listened, considered, and then said, the Thunderhead says you can still find fulfillment by painting unsavory art. Excuse me? Paint murals of the things you're truly feeling in places that you're not supposed to paint them. The Thunderhead wants me to break the law. Even when the Thunderhead spoke to people, it was happy to support an unsavory lifestyle for those who chose it. Being an unsavory artist might be the purpose you're looking for. Spray paint a public car in the middle of the night. Paint an angry mural on your local peace officer headquarters. Yes, break the rules. Ezra found himself beginning to breathe so quickly he was hyperventilating. No one had ever suggested that he might find fulfillment by breaking the rules. Ever since the Thunderhead went silent, people were falling over one another to follow rules. It was as if a stone had been lifted from his soul. Thank you, Ezra said. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And he left to begin his new life as an unrepentant artist. And that is the end of that chapter, guys. Thank you all so much for watching today's episode of Storytime with Freak. I know we only did 2 episodes, but I got a lot of gaming videos I got to edit. I got to go get lunch and also prepare to edit this podcast and upload that. So I appreciate the patience. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. You will have more hopefully on Sunday. I'll actually be out of town for 2 days, so I will do my best. But feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Share the channel with your friends. Feel free to check out either one of these gaming videos that are popping up. And, of course, thank you to my patrons on Patreon. I love you all so much for supporting my content creation dream. Yeah. Stay freaky.